Jimmy had started the interview, but Denzel stood up, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a 47-year-old secret. The Tonight Show was in full swing. Audience laughing. Band playing. Jimmy Fallon doing what he does best, making his guests feel comfortable, finding the humor, keeping the energy high. Denzel Washington sat in the guest chair looking effortlessly elegant in a tailored suit, that familiar warm smile on his face. They'd been talking for maybe 2 minutes. Standard opening banter. Denzel's new film. A funny story from set. Jimmy laughing at all the right moments. The rhythm was perfect. And then Denzel's hand went to his jacket pocket. He pulled out an envelope. Old. Yellowed with age. The kind of paper that's been folded and unfolded so many times the creases have turned soft. Jimmy noticed immediately. His next question died on his lips. "What's that?" Denzel looked at the envelope, then at Jimmy. His smile faded into something quieter. More serious. "I wasn't sure if I was going to show you this tonight," Denzel said. "But sitting here, right now, it feels like the right time." The audience went quiet. Not the awkward quiet of a joke falling flat. The electric quiet of everyone sensing something real is about to happen. Denzel stood up. Not dramatically. Just a natural movement, like he needed to be on his feet for what came next. "Jimmy, this letter was written in 1977. I was 22 years old. I just finished drama school. I was broke, confused, and I had no idea if I'd ever make it as an actor." Jimmy leaned forward on his desk, completely focused. "Who wrote it?" "A woman named Mrs. Coleman. Ella Coleman. My high school English teacher back in Mount Vernon, New York." What Jimmy didn't know was that Mrs. Coleman had been dead for 18 years, and the letter had instructions that Denzel had never been able to follow, until tonight. Denzel walked over to Jimmy's desk. The cameras followed him. The studio crew had stopped moving. Even the roots had gone still, instruments quiet. "Mrs. Coleman changed my life," Denzel continued, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "I was a decent student, but I was angry. My parents had just divorced. I was getting into trouble. She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself." He held up the envelope. "She gave me this letter the day I graduated high school, June 1973. But she told me not to open it. She said, 'Denzel, put this somewhere safe. Don't read it until you really need it. You'll know when that moment comes.'" Jimmy's eyes widened. "And you never opened it?" "I opened it in 1977. For years after she gave it to me. I was living in a roach-infested apartment in Hell's Kitchen. I'd been to maybe 200 auditions. Got rejected from all of them. I was working as a security guard at night, going to auditions during the day, and seriously considering giving up." Denzel's voice dropped lower. "One night I came home after another rejection. I was done. Finished. I decided I was going to quit acting and move back home. And that's when I remembered the letter." The studio was completely silent now. 300 people holding their breath. "I opened it," Denzel said, "and Mrs. Coleman had written me 3 pages. 3 pages about belief. About purpose. About how talent means nothing without perseverance. She told me she'd seen hundreds of students over her 30-year career, and only a handful had what it took to do something extraordinary. She said I was one of them." Jimmy's hand had moved to his chest. "That's beautiful. But that's not why I'm showing you this tonight." Denzel carefully opened the old envelope and pulled out the letter. The paper was fragile, the ink faded. At the bottom of the letter, she wrote something else. She said, "When you make it, Denzel, not if, when. I want you to do something for me. Find a young person who's exactly where you are right now. Lost. Scared. Talented but doesn't know it yet. And give them this letter. Pass it forward." The camera zoomed in on the letter in Denzel's hands. You could see Mrs. Coleman's handwriting, slightly shaky but clear. Jimmy was silent, processing. "Did you ever get to thank her?" Denzel shook his head. She died in 2006. Brain aneurysm. Sudden. I was filming in Morocco. By the time I heard about it, the funeral was over. I never got to tell her what her letter meant to me. What it did for my life. Backstage, a producer was frantically checking the audience roster, because what Denzel said next would make perfect sense in exactly 60 seconds. For 18 years, Denzel continued, I've carried this letter. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting to meet the right person. Someone who needed it the way I needed it in 1977. He looked directly into the camera. 2 weeks ago, I met someone. A young actor. 23 years old. Incredibly talented. And absolutely terrified that they're not good enough. They reminded me so much of myself at that age that it actually hurt to listen to them talk. Jimmy was leaning so far forward he was almost off his chair. Who is it? Denzel smiled. They're here tonight. In your audience. The entire studio erupted in gasps. Audience members started looking around, trying to figure out who Denzel was talking about. The cameras panned across the crowd. Row 7, Denzel said, pointing. Blue jacket. The camera found him immediately. A young black man in his early 20s, sitting in the 7th row, looking absolutely stunned. His hand was over his mouth. His eyes were wide with shock. Marcus, Denzel called out. Can you come down here? Marcus didn't move at first. The people around him were nudging him, encouraging him. Finally, on shaking legs, he stood up and made his way down the aisle toward the stage. Jimmy stood up from behind his desk. The audience was applauding, but softly, reverently, like they understood they were witnessing something sacred. Marcus reached the stage area. He looked terrified and overwhelmed. Up close, you could see he'd been crying. Marcus graduated from Juilliard last year, Denzel explained to Jimmy and the audience. He's been to over 300 auditions in the past 10 months. He's gotten exactly 2 callbacks. No bookings. He's working 3 jobs to pay rent. And last week, he told me he was thinking about quitting. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. 2 Oscars, 40 years of work I'm proud of, because she refused to let me quit. He held out the letter. This belongs to you now. Marcus's face crumpled. I can't take that. That's yours. That's from your teacher. No, Denzel said firmly. It was mine for 47 years. Now it's yours. That was always the deal. Mrs. Coleman knew it. I know it. And now you know it. Marcus took the letter with trembling hands. He looked down at it, at Mrs. Coleman's handwriting from nearly half a century ago, and he started crying openly. Denzel pulled him into a hug. The audience stood up, applauding. Jimmy was wiping tears from his eyes. The camera captured all of it, this moment of one generation passing hope to another, of a teacher's words reaching across decades to save one more dream. When they separated, Denzel kept his hands on Marcus's shoulders. You're going to make it. I know you are. And one day, 20 or 30 years from now, you're going to find someone who needs this letter. And you're going to pass it forward again. Marcus couldn't form words. He just nodded, clutching the letter to his chest. What happened next wasn't planned by any producer, wasn't in any script, wasn't anything anyone had prepared for. Jimmy Fallon walked out from behind his desk. He approached Marcus and Denzel, and for a moment he just stood there with them. Then he did something that would be remembered as one of the most genuine moments in late-night television history. Marcus, Jimmy said quietly, I know this isn't how these shows usually work, but would you stay up here with us for a minute? I think there are some people watching at home who need to hear your story. Marcus looked shocked. I'm not. I'm nobody. I'm just. You're somebody who's fighting for their dream. Jimmy interrupted gently. That makes you exactly the kind of person who should be on this stage. A production assistant quickly brought out another chair. Marcus sat between Jimmy and Denzel, still holding the letter like it might disappear if he let go. Tell us, Jimmy said. What's the hardest part? What makes you want to quit? Marcus took a shaky breath. It's the silence. After every audition, there's just silence. No one calls. No one responds. And you start wondering if you're delusional. If everyone else can see you don't have what it takes, and you're the only one who can't see it. Denzel nodded slowly. I know that silence. I lived in that silence for years. But you're Denzel Washington, Marcus said. You're you. I wasn't always me, Denzel replied. In 1977, I was just some kid from Mount Vernon who couldn't book a commercial for dish soap. The only difference between who I was then and who I am now is that I didn't quit on the days when quitting made perfect sense. Jimmy looked at Marcus. What's your dream role? If you could play anyone, do anything, what would it be? Marcus hesitated, then smiled through his tears. I want to play Malcolm X. I've studied him since I was 15. I've read every biography. Watched every documentary. I know it's probably impossible, but I played Malcolm X, Denzel said quietly. The studio went silent again. Marcus looked at Denzel, and the parallel was almost too perfect to be real. That role changed my life, Denzel continued. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. The most important. And before I got that role, I'd been rejected for it twice. Twice. Spike Lee didn't think I was right for it at first. What changed his mind? Marcus asked. I didn't quit. I kept working. Kept improving. Kept showing up. And when the third opportunity came, I was ready. Denzel leaned closer. You're going to get your Malcolm X, Marcus. Maybe not that exact role, but your version of it. The role that defines your career. It's coming. You just have to still be in the game when it arrives. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it, because stories like this deserve to be heard. Jimmy turned to the audience. I think we all needed to see this tonight. Sometimes we forget that every person we admire was once exactly where Marcus is right now. Scared. Uncertain. One bad day away from giving up. He looked back at Marcus. What are you going to do now? Marcus looked down at the letter in his hands, then up at Denzel, then out at the audience. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to read this letter every time I want to quit. And I'm going to make Mrs. Coleman proud. You already have, Denzel said. The audience erupted again. This time the applause was thunderous, sustained, the kind of applause that comes from witnessing something that transcends entertainment. Marcus stood up to go back to his seat, but Jimmy stopped him. Actually, before you go, I want to give you something too. Jimmy walked back to his desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out one of his blue note cards, the cards he wrote his interview questions on every night. I'm not Denzel Washington, Jimmy said with a self-deprecating smile. And this isn't a letter from a life-changing teacher. But I write on these cards every single night. Questions I want to ask. Things I don't want to forget. And tonight I'm going to write something I want you to remember. Jimmy grabbed a pen and wrote something on the card. Then he folded it and handed it to Marcus. Don't read it now, Jimmy said. Read it the next time you get rejected. The next time the silence feels too loud. Marcus took the card, nodded, and made his way back to his seat. The audience stood again, applauding his walk back up the aisle. When Marcus sat down, the person next to him could be seen on camera asking what Jimmy had written. Marcus unfolded the card, read it, and immediately started crying again, but this time he was smiling through the tears. The camera caught a glimpse of the card. In Jimmy's handwriting, the world needs what only you can give. Don't rob us of it. Denzel and Jimmy finished the interview, but nobody remembered what else they talked about. What mattered had already happened. 3 months later, Marcus booked his first major role. A year after that, he was nominated for a Theatre World Award. He keeps Mrs. Coleman's letter and Jimmy's note card in his wallet. Every single day. And Denzel? He watches every project Marcus does. Waiting for the day when Marcus finds the next scared young actor who needs that letter. waiting for the chain to continue. Mrs. Coleman's words, written in 1977, are still saving dreams in 2024.